Okay. Hello, and everyone, and welcome to Talk Tonight. We are here in the UK, but we're also in Calgary at 12 p.m. I'm on obviously just past 7 as well. So, welcome to one of my best friends in the world. We've been through so many challenges together. And we are here in, like I said, I'm in the UK, and obviously Ian's in Calgary. So Ian, welcome.
Thanks, Robbie. Good to be here. Hello, everybody.
It's good to speak to you, man. And like I
Yeah.
said, we hear on obviously on Talk Tonight. So anyway, in this episode, we're going to have a chat about our life, on Ian's life. Obviously, his massive change to Canada, which is obviously like a massive change. But then, obviously, when we talk about Ian's early life, it is interesting because obviously Ian is he's not from Sheffield. He's sort of like an outside of Sheffield, so
I
it's
was I was
Rotherham.
born I was born in Sheffield.
Yeah, you were born in Sheffield, right?
Yeah, I was born in Sheffield, but I uh, moved to Rotherham very early and lived most 37 years of my life in Rotherham.
Is that where mum and dad um, obviously were together, and then obviously that was like a very early life?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, they're both from Rotherham originally. Most of my family's actually Irish, going back. But like my great grandfather moved from Cork over to England when he was like, I don't know, a young man, and then my mum's side started there, and I think my dad's side is Northern Irish. Actually, I'm not sure.
Yeah. What with your dad? Where was he born?
My dad,
Yeah,
he was. I'm pretty sure he was born in Rotherham.
in Rotherham. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So not Irish. So
No,
obviously
no, no, no.
your mum though, right? Was
My
Irish or?
mum's no, my mum was also born in Rotherham. Yeah,
Right. Okay. So
yeah,
Rotherham, like
yeah.
everyone's from Rotherham, basically.
Sadly, so yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's a nice. It would used to be a nice town, and it is what it is. It's home still. So
Yeah, obviously we played obviously like a football in Rotherham.
yeah,
Obviously from Swansea. Obviously we played Rotherham like every year because obviously we were right at the end of division. We were like Division 2 or 3. We were absolute rubbish, and we'd always play Rotherham.
yeah,
And when we started to get a good run from Swansea, um, to obviously to do really well in the very early cups. Rotherham, the first time that we beat Rotherham, then obviously we were starting to move forward in the divisions and what it used to work like. And then obviously that's when I first met, like, I never knew anything about Rotherham apart from football. That was like it. That was like it. So obviously, like in your early life,
yeah.
in Rotherham, did you, with your work and that sort of stuff, like your family were sort of like in Rotherham. What was life like? Because obviously it is, when I speak to a lot of people, it's very interesting when they talk about like their early life. I talk about a lot about myself, like being from Swansea, like I
Yeah.
live in Coventry now, but like it's different to move from like Rotherham. You just wanted to, I guess, like, would you just want to stay there, like in Rotherham forever? Or did you want to sort of like move away from there, like as much as you could?
Well, I don't know. It's like my personality grew and developed as I got older. So in my early years, I grew up as an only child. Um, no siblings, just my mom, my dad. They both worked full time. So
Mhm.
my gran had a huge part in bringing me up. I didn't know my other grandparents much. Briefly, my mom's mom died when I guess I was a teenager when she died, actually. So I knew her for a while, but I never knew my granddads, either one of them. But yeah, I grew up, like I say, only kid, but it was all about playing football. That was my life. It was like, even as a young kid, it was we'd get home from school, we'd go out with we'd all go out, we'd grab a ball, and we'd go and kick it around on the field, and then when it was dark, we came home.
Yeah,
That's that was pretty much it, and that was life as I knew it, for the longest time.
yeah.
Um, you know, right up until, even after, like, I lost my dad, but that's what we did, and I had no thoughts ever on, I'm a young kid at this stage, so don't know where I'm going to end up. No plans to go anywhere. Home's home at the end of the day. I didn't know much outside of them.
How old were you when your dad passed away? I remember you telling me about it.
Yeah, I was 13 when my dad passed away. I had so I've got a few early memories of life, and they're not all great ones. So, like, I remember vividly Christmas Day on 1984. Christmas Day 1984 was the day that I found out my dad had pancreatic cancer, and that he only had, you know, at that point they were giving him 6 months to live, which turned out to be fairly accurate.
Yeah,
Um, but, like, I'm 12 years old. My mom and dad had just bought me a music sender for Christmas. I'd been after one for ages, and they just bought me one. So for those old enough to remember, it's with a turntable, the cassette decks, and the radio in it. And it was right at the time when you had to put your own plugs on there. So
yeah.
you just came with a cord, and which was pretty useless. So it was a thing where you had to fit your own plugs. So
Yeah, yeah, we had one. I
yeah,
mean, I would have been about 3,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I remember my mum.
yeah,
My granddad. I never met him. He was died very similar. He died of cancer
yeah.
uh, in 1979. So I never actually met my granddad.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously then my mum. She was like, so my brother was born in 1979, so obviously like my brother is my half brother, but
Yeah.
basically, yeah, like where my granddad, he was again, he died in, he was 46, so like,
Hmm.
he was 46 again. He was very, everyone's was very young, and it's a very similar situation where like
Yeah.
you have that situation, and all of a sudden you've got to be able to sort of like to deal with that. I mean, you were like 13, 12, 13 years old. Like that must have been like a massive change for you, especially for your mum as well.
Well, like, for me, it's like, obviously I'd only ever heard of cancer on the TV. You see it on programs every now and again, on whatever my mom would watch, and there wasn't. I don't recall there was a lot of. It wasn't very publicized or anything. So, like I say, here I am, Christmas Day. I'm excited. I don't know anything different. I'm just pestering my dad to come and put me this plug on, and pestering him and bothering him all the time, as a young
Mm.
kid would. And my mum took me in the bedroom to one side, and she said, "Don't bother your dad today, Ian." She went, "He's not doing too good." And I'm like, "Well, what's wrong with him?" Sort of thing. And then that's when she told me, like, she just said he'd got terminal cancer, and I was like, "Well, okay, but what is that?" And sort of thing. And then she told me what it all entailed, and I remember saying the exact words. I said, "Well, you make it sound like he's only got, a 6 months to live, a short time to live." And she said, "That's exactly what it is."
Yeah.
And and then yeah, that's a big change, right? That's a lot to take in, and so life was never really the same from then on because
Yeah.
my mom had me. My mom and dad were like they had me later in life. My mom was 40 and my dad was 43, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, so so yeah, I mean, I was I was spoiled. I have no problems admitting it. They spoiled me. My mom spoiled me everything she could give me. She gave me, and that extended a whole life, right? It was like I was her only kid, and as my wife likes to say now, she's like I was like the prince to my
Yeah.
mom, right? Like, and then obviously when my dad did pass away, all that stopped because money was obviously different and life was totally different. And there was a lot of adjusting going to, and I was at school. I was bullied at school my whole life.
Yeah.
And it never stopped even now. Because my dad died in between my third and fourth year at school.
Yeah.
So I went back to school, and people knew about it, but it
Yeah.
didn't really nothing really changed.
Yeah.
Um, but
It say it was, I didn't really have a father, like, at the
yeah,
age of like 3, and everyone sort of like at that age, like in the 1980s,
yeah,
everyone's family sort of like stuck together. Do you know what I mean? Like even when they had like, they had bad situations going on with their family, but like everyone had a mum and dad.
yeah,
I did I didn't have all I had was my mum and my
yeah,
gran.
yeah,
Like that's all we had. And I think people used to not pick on me a little bit, and obviously me on Daniel as well. And then obviously we found out that me and Daniel are half brothers. We didn't know.
right.
Like that was so difficult, like at the time.
Oh, I can
And
imagine. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's like people sort of like pick a little bit, and oh, your dad had cancer, and like same with my granddad, like he died at like the age of 46. Like it
yeah,
it doesn't happen. Like my mom and obviously my uncle, like my mum and my uncle, like that's all we had. Like we only had a small family anyway, very similar to yourself.
hmm,
I remember you telling me about your mum, and how tough that was at a particular time. And
yeah.
it's not great, like because
Well,
it's that you
but
stick with the rest of your life, isn't it?
it's you still like I can look back on it now, and it's obviously a lot easier to talk about because I understand it a lot more. It's you don't realize it at the time, but you're still growing as a person, and the person you're going to be initially in life is how your childhood
Yeah,
develops. And my mom brought all the empathy and the kindness and generosity and just an amazing human being side. And my dad brought the discipline. He had he was the disciplinarian, and I lost that. So one of the first things that happened is my just I guess my maturity levels just accelerated,
yeah,
like because I had to grow up instantly in those couple of years, and I'm trying to do exams at school, and but I had to grow up instantly just to try and provide support for my mom,
yeah,
and then later in my teen years after I left school, I kind of dropped back again. I kind of regressed a little bit, and I mean, I was never a problem child. My mum's words, I never brought the police to our door, and she was grateful for that. But I went through, I went
yeah.
through times. Yeah, I went through times where I didn't apply myself, at school or anything. It's like I thought I could coast through exams, and um, my natural ability got me so far, but I lost. I left school with one GCSE, and that affected my working
I
life,
can't
going
believe
forward.
I can't believe that because I know like how You're such a clever guy. Like, you
Yeah.
come with one GCSE. Like,
Yeah. It's like I think the pass grade was a C back then, and I ended up with 7 Ds and 1 C.
yeah,
Um, and so you could see I was right on the cusp of like I should have, I should have done a lot better, but you know what, it is what it is, and we moved. You adapt and you get on with it. But no,
um,
it was a tough time because my mom then met another gentleman um, who seemed to be a really nice guy, and then until he became jealous of my existence, basically. Um, and there was, he intimidated. He tried to intimidate me physically, and was the reason why I moved out. Eventually, and I moved out because of this guy. And then, like years later, this guy, like who was my mum's, long term companion, um, he, I don't wish this on anyone. He got motor neuron disease, and so my
oh,
mum
I
went.
remember that. Yeah,
He passed away while I was in the Navy, and
that's right.
yeah, and my mum like had to nurse my dad through cancer, and then she had to nurse, her other partner, through motor neuron disease, which is a horrendous. It's
That's
just as
right.
bad, if not worse, than cancer because it goes on for a lot longer,
Yeah,
and it's one of the worst things I've had to witness. A person go through, and
yeah,
knowing what my mom went through, and I wasn't around to help her much because I was in the military, but I did every time I was home. I helped her as much as I could.
yeah,
Um, but again, it's like seeing two people go through those illnesses is like I remember one particular time my dad he'd been treated at the hospital and he'd come back and he was on morphine and
hmm,
this one night I remember being woken up. um, I think this is like a few months, about 2 or 3 months before he died. Like, and this one night he just woke up and he was absolutely convinced somebody was in the house. And he pinned me to my bed and he said, "Do not move, stay here." And he was like, he was frantic, and he shut the door, and my mum was screaming, and he was running all over the house trying to find this person that he thought was in the house, and it was all in his head, right? And it was the morphine and his
yeah,
condition, and these are just things that stick with me. I'm 13 years old. Like this is like nearly 40 years ago now. So, but those memories are vivid. They're very clear as day. But yeah, it was a horrible thing to witness my
hmm,
mom, myself, of my dad to go through.
yeah,
And I'm sure, I know lots of other people have, has experienced the same thing.
yeah.
It is what it
Well,
is.
well, obviously, one of my best friends, he's he's got he's got a really bad disease. At 42, he's really struggling. But what happened with him is his nephew had motor neuron when he was obviously when they were very young,
Yeah.
and he passed away when like he was 16 years old. And again, he was looked after like everything in his life, and then obviously like to die at like 15, 16 years old in motor neuron disease.
Oh,
And then
it's
obviously my
just,
friend, yeah, my friend Carl at the moment like is struggling
yeah,
with a different disease, which is again very very tough.
yeah,
Uh, and to go through it is just like it's horrendous. And
it is.
it's like I say, like for you to go through it like twice, like obviously I know, like obviously you had a your mum had a companion, and
Yeah.
I remember that happening, and that must have been like really really tough for you.
It
So
was, it was more tough on my mum, than me at the time. I was
that
worried
was
for her because it was a
quite a
lot.
few years back now, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been. This would have been around 2003 ish.
Yeah.
And my dad passed in 1985. So, like I say,
Hmm.
I was obviously I was in the Navy at the time. I,
Yeah.
I got compassionate leave to come home and be with my mum for a little bit through it, and I was there with
Yeah.
him when I was there with him and my mum when he passed away in the
Yeah.
hospital. So yeah,
That's terrible.
yeah,
So obviously, when you were obviously you went in the navy at
yep,
28, which is just like I mean, like say we joined at the same time.
yep,
Obviously, I was 18.
yep,
Um, just literally on the 26th, 27th, I turned 19.
hmm,
Uh, and I met you. You were obviously in a different class to me. So I
yeah,
was at um, where was I? I'm looking at I was at Drake.
yep.
I was at Drake, and you were at
Pello.
Bob.
I was in
Yes,
Pello. Yeah,
in Halo. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you were in obviously a different class to me.
yeah.
Uh, so joining the navy at like 28, like because obviously you had a relatively good job from
Yeah.
right about in it was okay, but you had relatively okay money.
Um,
You were
yeah,
you were you were mellowed together as well at that time, right?
yeah, Mel, my wife, we were, yeah. So we met in 1998. Um,
You were
we,
mellowed. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, we got together in 1998. We actually met 5 or 6 years before that, but then she went to the States and I moved away from the area, and
That's
um,
right.
and then we kind of bumped into each other again. But yeah, the so I originally applied for the Navy at 19, 18, 19, and
All right.
I did it because why? Well, the group of friends that I had back home were all decided en masse they were going to join the Navy, and
Similar.
so I was like, all right, sure, I don't want to be left behind, and then I had like I said, I was a different person back then. I was so quiet, shy, little self confidence. And it just, once I got to the interview stage, I realized just what I was doing. And it was like, I'm not ready. So I remember telling the careers office I wasn't going to do it. I didn't feel ready, and I didn't want to make a mistake and waste their time. And he actually commended me and said, "Your results will be on file, and if you ever want to come back, you know, we'll take you with we'll welcome you with open arms." And it was actually my wife who's been like such a pillar, and we'll talk about this in a bit later, but she was actually the one who encouraged me to go for it because it's it never went away, right? It never went away. I always wanted to do it, but I just didn't. I didn't have the guts really. If I have to be completely honest, it was like I just bottled it. I didn't have the confidence to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and then yeah, it just got to the stage where, because of the way I'd done at school, my
Hmm.
job choices, my career choices were so limited.
Yeah.
I had got myself into a good paying job in the steelworks in Sheffield,
Yeah.
um, at Tinsley Wire, which is I think it was part of British Steel, but I was earning fairly good money at the time. But for me, it was just a lifeless job. It was a machine operating job. I just went in,
Did
I
the
hit,
job.
I did my job, I hit the targets, and I went home. And that followed I had another job before that in a foundry, and then I worked in factories. Those were the sort of jobs that were open to me. And
Yeah.
no offense to those jobs, but I always felt that I was capable of doing a lot more. I was and I was underachieving. And so at 28 years of old, you've got a mortgage, and credit was a thing. So it's like if I could get credit, I was buying it. And
Yeah.
it was like I was locked into the job I was in because of the money I was earning.
Yeah.
So going back to school wasn't an option. And then it just all made sense. Going to the Navy, retraining, doing the thing that I dreamed I always wanted to do. My dad
Yeah.
wanted to join the Navy, but he was medically disqualified as a young guy, so he ended up in the army. So in
Hmm.
my head, I'm like, well, I'm gonna make my dad proud, right? By doing this. And that was a huge driving factor as well. And my wife was like, you're going to regret this your whole life if you don't do it.
Yeah.
And that was part of me becoming the person that I am today.
Yeah.
Um, and I became, and yeah, and as tough, and I mean, it would prove to be tough, but again, life is tough, and life, you've got to battle through it, and you come out on
Yeah.
the other side. But
Yeah, I like I said, I was the same. Like it was very similar. I was like 17 years old. Like I had a bit of a job. I was
yeah,
working at McDonald's at the time, just to get like a job. I was just chilling, just did whatever I wanted to do. Then I was a friend of mine. He joined the Navy year above. He was like 18. He was in the school above,
yeah,
and he said to me like I was going to join the RAF at that particular time. I always wanted to be a pilot, but I was never like straight. I was really not good enough like to be a pilot. Too tall anyway, like too short.
yeah.
Um, and then obviously I got a job in the RAF, but it would have taken me another year to do this very similar job that we did in the Navy.
Hmm.
It was very similar job. But then they said like it's going to take you about 18 months. So it's just like, well, so I went to the office and they sort of said to me like, well, you got really good. Um, you've done really well in school. You've done okay.
Yeah,
You could join like the army, and you could join like a. It was just about like the comms to do comms in the army, and then obviously they give me an option then to obviously go underwater warfare, do that sort of stuff.
yeah,
And like it's just a bit like I was EW to begin with, wasn't it? And
yeah,
like
yeah,
electronic warfare, and
yeah,
like it was just giving me like the options, and then obviously did did the run and all the rest of it, like got ready, and then my mum got me a course in the army course for 8 weeks. It was like an 8 week course whilst I was waiting to go into the navy it was like in the September.
hmm,
Uh, yeah, and like everything changed my life like complete, and it still does. I still say the same things to my kids, that the way that I behave like 5 minutes before, that sort of shit. Like
yeah,
I tell my kids like you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to. And the best thing about Cara that I've ever met is she turns up early. That's her. That's why we got married because like
okay,
yeah, that's why we got married, because I picked the right woman.
yeah,
It took the second woman, but or maybe the third one. But Cara is the one who's just like
yeah,
she's she's like 15 minutes before. She's just like she's the only woman I've ever met. But
yeah.
yeah, in the navy and behavior and attitude, like that's why I think we were like really good friends. I mean, like in the beginning, we didn't particularly
We
like each.
weren't. We weren't at the beginning.
Why?
Oh God. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I've like right from playing football, like I was always it was drilled into me by my coaches, team managers, and everything. And even my dad, like to an early age, that competitive spirit.
Me
And it's
too.
like I wasn't doing anything to come second. It was like so. It was everything I was going to do, I was going to do to the best of my ability, and as a group, as a class, my class was going to be the best in there, and
You
you
took
were
it too hard, though, didn't you?
I did, yeah, and that was kind of my downside, but you were like so vocal. You were like everyone knew who you were. You were
Yeah,
like, I mean, not to pick at your size or anything, but you were like the smallest guy there, but
yeah,
you were the loudest voice. Everyone knew when your class was there and your natural leadership ability at 18 years old is something that I've just never come across, right?
The thing is, right, to begin with, they give that bloke in my class, he'd been in the, not in the Navy, he'd been in the merchant Navy.
Right.
And he was doing the same thing as you. He was
Yeah.
sort of like giving it the big one, like, and
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. And he was the class manager or class officer.
Yeah.
And to begin with, I struggled with some of my swimming, and like I was a bit like to begin with, but all of my in my class to begin with, they said I should have been the class
Yeah.
officer, class of manager, whatever it was,
Yeah.
and they sort of said to me like, and then they didn't give me the job, and everyone was a bit like, well, why didn't we give Taff the job anyway?
Yeah.
And then obviously after about like it was about, they give it to me like about 4 weeks, and like everyone knew me at that particular time, but everyone knew you as well.
Yeah.
But the reason that they this is what happened, and you probably not remember this, right? But I do.
Yeah.
What affected you, right, and why you lost your job, like to be a class officer,
Class leader. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to be a
Yeah.
class leader.
Yeah.
We went on like a run. Wasn't like a run. It was like in the not in the dirty run. It was like in a run when you everything turned up white. Everyone turned up white and white socks, and you
Yeah.
turned up with black socks. You turned up. You got fucking beasted.
Oh yeah.
Like you got proper beasted, right?
Yeah.
And then he said, get him off. Get him off that class. So yeah, we were obviously chatting about like our time in the Navy and with the socks, you and your socks. And that's obviously why you kind of like you lost your job. We started really good friends then.
Yeah, that was part of the reasoning. That definitely didn't help. But a lot of stuff going on behind that is, I was having to try to relate to like I had a really young class,
Oh
like
yeah,
it's like just about 99% of my class were like, I think the oldest was 17.
yeah.
So I think there was one 23-year-old and a 21-year-old. And let's just say I had some struggles, and I wasn't used to being in that sort of position. I've never been in charge of a group of people, led a group of people or anything. So it was just purely because of my age. So, but again, it was a learning process, and I was good at it at the time, and but you don't get a lot of time to dwell on things and mope about it. It's like you just pick it up and you support whoever takes over, and you just keep going. And like saying, your class eventually ended up winning. You got God,
Yeah, we got.
and you got top honors. I think we came next, second, or something like that.
I think
But
you won everything else, but we won God. We won nothing. We won nothing. The only one we won was God. And I said, like, I'm sorry, but like we have to win God. Like,
yeah,
if there is no back or forth. Like, we have to win this.
well,
Like,
that was the big one. But like anything to do with sports, there's no way in hell we were losing those. I wasn't going to let it happen. But
you had
but
people
yeah,
owner and
yeah.
you had some shockers, but we had some bad ones. Like, and then obviously we had Lamar. And then
Lamar.
what happened with Lamar, wasn't it? Like, I had to
Well,
deal with that. Like,
Well, that's when you and I really bonded. That was after basic training, so we went into seamanship training, and it was different. We weren't competing against each other anymore. We were in the same class.
yeah, and we were with
And
all of those. What's it called? The swimmers.
the Marines,
I
the
think
Marines, yeah,
absolute dickheads. Like, and that's why we became really good friends because we're just like these guys, just absolute dickheads. Like,
yeah,
they said
yeah.
to do seamanship, didn't they? And they had to do like,
I forgot. Yeah, they were involved somehow. I don't recall exactly why, but they were in there, and yeah, they were. There was a few of them, but yeah.
They were full of it, weren't they? Because obviously they had done their 9 months, and then they'd come back and do seamanship for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then obviously
Yeah.
we were waiting to go to Dryad at the time. Like we were
Yeah.
waiting. And then
Yeah.
obviously we ended up in bloody Dryad. And uh,
Christmas duties.
but we were lucky. We were lucky because we got the top end of the other part of Dryad. We could have been in the fucking shit or
Oh yeah.
bottom.
Yeah. 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 The older quarters. Like we got the
Yeah, because
brand new digs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There
Oh,
was. Yeah. Just you know, it is like say we through what we saw was adversity at the time. We just spent 8 weeks away from home, and then another 4 weeks in seamanship or whatever it was, and then all of a sudden, oh by the way, everyone's going home for Christmas except you guys. You've because we just got you guys, and you're going to be Christmas duty. So, um, but
because you're
even through
responsible.
that, yeah,
Because you're
yeah,
responsible.
yeah,
That's all it was. It was just we
yeah,
thought that we were responsible, and that's why we were
yeah,
picked. And it was horrendous. Like it was absolutely awful. Because then obviously we just went on the piss. Like Mel met up with you, and
yeah. She come down,
we
yeah,
just went out drinking.
yeah. I mean, there was nothing else to do. Everyone
Yeah,
else had gone home, and I remember I worked Christmas Day and on guard house duties, and then it was off New Year's, and Mel came down, and she came down and she brought a little Christmas tree with her, and we'd got a little B&B in Portsmouth, and she got a little Christmas tree, and she made a Christmas for us on New Year's, and then we went out New Year's Eve, and then she went home, and Christmas duties, it all came to an end, and life
yeah,
began again. But
yeah.
at the time, it seemed really, really, really
Bad.
harsh. But again, you know, it's easy looking back now. I'm older, and it's like it's another molding part to his lives, right? It makes it's life lessons, and you're just learning from it.
Yeah, that's why I covered you as well. Like because obviously you wanted to go for New Year's to
Yeah,
Mel. I said like,
yeah,
don't worry. I said I'll cover it, man. Don't worry about it. Like.
yeah,
And yeah, like I said, and then obviously we went away to our first ships. Like I was at Richmond, you were at see, I do remember. Uh,
Argyle.
yeah, you were in Argyle.
Yeah,
Obviously you went to Plymouth. I went to Portsmouth. I went to America,
yeah,
uh, and obviously I was like 6 months, pretty much, like in the West Indies, and we
yeah.
all
You got the
yeah a
you
helicopter.
got
Yeah,
you got the good trip, but then you had
bad
that
one.
he, that helo accident out there, which was really tough for you. I remember. Yeah,
Yeah, quite
it's
tough.
yeah,
Yeah, when you look back at it, like the thing is, like I always say the same thing, like to all the family, like if I'd not got involved with another girl, like I would have stayed in the navy for the rest of my life. Like
hmm,
I wouldn't have been able because I would have been ended up with having diabetes at the time, but like I would have stayed in forever. Like
yeah, yeah,
and I always say that too. I always say to Cara and that sort of stuff. Yeah, but you never would have met me and that sort of stuff. Like, I'm like, I wouldn't have had my children,
yeah,
uh, but like, I would have stayed in forever. Like,
yeah,
and I was going to go back at one point as well. Like, when Jack was a baby, I was going to
hmm,
go back. Like, I was just like, I need to go back. Like, I can't live like this. Like, but yeah, it's like it changes your life, doesn't it? You make decisions,
yeah,
and when you're in the military, and people don't understand. Like once you've been in the military, if you are normal, like this dickheads, and that's all people are staying in the navy. And
yeah,
we spoke about this as well. Is that like some of the people were in ships and that like some of them like obviously in Richmond's all men, and then
yeah.
obviously I went to um,
Montrose, was it?
Montrose. I went to Montrose and it was women, and
Yeah,
it was never the same. It was never the same compared to Richmond was. And
hmm,
like I got like on my tattoo is Richmond, like everything was Richmond, like when I go back at it now, like I had the offer to maybe go back, and I should have. I should have gone back. I could have finished my OM2s and could just go straight to. It would have been into not in America. Not in America. We went to straight to second. Well, would have gone straight, and
Yeah,
I should have done it. I should have
yeah.
just gone straight back, like. But it is what it was. But
Well,
yeah,
like
it's
say,
crazy, isn't it?
it's just part of your life. It's how it's how you go. It's there's paths. There's like a path. You either go left or right, and your life goes on as a result of that. So,
So why did you
but
change the navy? Why did you leave the navy? I can't remember because we finished around about the same time, about 5 years, a
yeah,
little bit more.
exactly.
Yeah,
Within a few months of each other. Like I think I left first, and you were shortly behind. I think, and yeah, I left because I just got married. So Mel and I got Mel
that
and
was
I
a
got
good, that was
married.
a good night out.
Yeah, yeah. Mel and I got married, and I remember we were on a honeymoon in Cancun on the beach, and I was just laid there, just relaxing in the sun, and I just turned around and I said, "I'm gonna put my notice in when I go back." And she looked at me, she's like, "What? What? You really? Seriously?" I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, you know, I chose a marriage because a lot of people my age were on like the third and fourth marriage in the Navy, and I was like, I don't want to be one of those people,
Yeah,
and it's like you know, I want to. I want to concentrate on our marriage, and we're in the beginnings of our married life, and
yeah,
being in the Navy is just going to put a lot of stress. It's a single man's life generally, and it. I'm I've got no real regrets about doing it, but it's a great life, and yes, do I miss parts of it? Absolutely, but
yeah,
I uh, ultimately I joined up too late. I should have joined up earlier, but
yeah,
I did it, and it made me into a different person.
yeah,
I came out of there with the confidence to start my own business. I was brimming with confidence. I wasn't shy anymore. I didn't back down to people anymore.
mhm,
It Yeah, it's kind of strange to say, but it made me a man at 28. It was kind of and and like the things that I've done now, like I'm moving to Canada. I never ever would have done that ever.
no, no,
No.
no. You would
So
have been staying in Rotherham.
yeah, I would have. I'd be still. I'd have my seat in the corner of the pub, and the pint would be on the bar every night, and that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So, so just about obviously, we've stayed in friends like
yeah,
pretty much like all the years. We've always been in touch with each other as much as we possibly can. We should
yeah,
have done more. We should have been on touch more. Like obviously, we'll talk about like Canada in a bit, but
yeah,
like yeah, we've always stayed in touch. Like you've always sort of like we meet up in Rotherham or we do something stupid. Like
yeah,
then obviously when we were still in the Navy, we'd left the Navy at that point, and then obviously we went to. I guess when I first met Hammy, during my time in the Navy as well. Like, so obviously we went out and piss a lot, like, and I can
hmm
talk swearing anyway, sort of like, doesn't really matter.
yeah,
But like, yeah, it was like, I would come to the weekend and spend time with you, and obviously at Mel's, you and Mel's, you know,
yeah,
house. I
yeah,
used to come and lie down on the floor and all the rest of it, and we won't talk about women too much. But yeah, it was just we were always in touch together, and then obviously like when we sort of like still in the navy at that time, and then obviously you had your marriage, and
yeah,
everything changed at that particular time. Then,
yeah,
um, and then I was getting married. Then second time, I wasn't. I was engaged, but then obviously like I was getting married then in
yeah,
Edinburgh, and it's the first time that like I was still like friendly with Hammy anyway, because we were always like, we meet up in Rotherham and
Yeah.
Rotherham and stuff.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
met Hammy like, God, you must have been about 29, 30 at the time. And then obviously I met Hammy. I'm like, who is this guy? Like, he's an absolute nutter. And we
Yeah.
went on a stag. It was my stag party in Edinburgh,
Yeah.
right? So we went on a stag party in Edinburgh, right? We're going to talk about that before we start talking about Hammy a little bit more, right? So anyway, we went on a stag, and you came with my mates from Wales, and you and Hammy came.
Yeah.
Uh, you just like, yeah, we'll just come, and then obviously you said,
Yeah.
"I'll bring my mate, Hammy." I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, yes. Oh yeah, no, because I knew Hammy anyway through.
Yeah.
Growing up.
You invited him.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
always invited. Yeah, I was always
Yeah.
invited.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did invite himself. Uh,
Well,
so
I
anyway,
mean, I was just going to go back a bit to when you first met him. Like, so you were having a bit of a tough time in the Navy with passing a course.
that's,
You were having a hard time down there, and then you failed an exam, didn't you?
yeah,
And you had your resit. You had,
Earl,
yeah, you failed your exam, I think, on the Thursday or Friday, and I was due to go weekenders, and like I say, you were going through a hell of a time down there, with a girl, and I was, and I took you. I'm like, okay, you're coming home with me. You're not staying down here. And we went home to Rotherham, and we just had one night. We had a night on we went out, and then that's when you met Hammy for the first time,
yeah,
and he was making fun of you instantly, but it was the way he is. He meant that genuinely, right? And that was a bit of the fact that A, you were little, and B, you were Welsh, and he was just being the Northern Yorkshire English guy, and
yeah,
that was just kind of how he was. It was his way of, saying he liked you in a way, because that's kind of how he acted, and you had to know him to understand that, and you did. You didn't react to it, but as well as that, then we did some studying, and you went back down past your course, and the rest is history, right?
yeah,
Um, but that led to then you inviting him on the stag do, and
yeah,
then we got the train up from Doncaster to meet you guys in Edinburgh,
yeah.
and that was a weekend.
That weekend was like mental anyway, and then so on the Saturday. So we went on the Friday. We went on the piss on the Friday because obviously We were really nice place in Edinburgh. We got like a
Beautiful.
really nice,
Yeah.
beautiful place in Edinburgh. We met
Yeah.
up and but we met up on the Friday. You came on the Friday. We went on the lash on the Friday, and then we went on the Saturday as well. And obviously we went up.
Yeah.
It was like my stag, wasn't it? And then we had this stupid T-shirt with my face, and I had this stupid. They dressed me in like the most ridiculous. And I have to show you. I will send this picture. Right, there's this picture of me, and
Yeah.
obviously with Hammy and obviously my mates as well, like in Wales. And
Yeah.
and we're walking through Edinburgh, like, and Hammy's there, like, he's full of it and that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden, he disappears.
Yeah.
He just disappeared. And then it
Yeah.
was like, on the Sunday morning, it was just like, where's Hammy? So, like, all my mates are going, where's Hammy? So everyone
Yeah.
loved him, like, straight away. They all absolutely loved him. And they were
Yeah.
like, where's Hammy? We're really worried about him. Like, and then it was like we were having breakfast like about Sunday morning. You were going back from Doncaster to Rotherham.
Yeah. I'd got all his gear.
Where's Hammy? And then you were like, you had to pick up his coat, his bag, and
Yeah.
all the rest of it. And you were like, we're really worried about him. And then it turned up that he turned up with his missus, and she turned up and said, "Where have you been?" Like
Yeah.
saying to Hammy, you're like, "Where have you been?" And
Yeah.
he just went by himself, got himself a train from Edinburgh
Yeah.
back to Rotherham like about 1 a.m., 2 a.m. And we were just like so worried
Yeah.
about it. We were so worried.
It,
And then
it was.
I had my wedding then on
Yeah,
couple of weeks later, about 4 or 5 weeks later,
yeah,
and we had to say to Hammy, because obviously he brought his wife in,
yeah.
and we were like, he can't, we can't tell him, we can't tell his wife, we have to just like not tell her any this information.
Well, well, she. I mean, it effectively what happened was like he was out with us during the night, and then, but I kind of have to give some insight onto this. So every time, so Hammy and myself, we were inseparable.
Yeah,
And wherever one of us was, the other one would show up at some point. It was inevitable, and we were like a couple, right? And so we would always be going out. Like the village we lived in we had 5 pubs close to us, and we were known. And it's a village where everybody knew everybody, right? So, I mean, you've been there, and it's like, and like we were well known within the village, for good and for bad. um we would always be getting up to things, right? We used to drink, and we used to play pool, and we'd have our own kind of fun, and
yeah,
some people liked it, some people didn't. Um but the one thing that always happened whenever Hammy and I would go out, I never came home with him, not once. He would just do it. He would in his own words, and I'm remembering his words now in my head. I hit a wall, and he
yeah,
did. He would just drink and drink and drink, and then he would hit a wall, and he'd wander off,
yeah,
and it like you'd think he was going to the bathroom or something, and then the next minute you realize you haven't seen him for an hour,
yeah,
and this was usually the end of the night, and then he just hit a wall, and he'd jump in a taxi and he'd go home. It was like autopilot for him.
yeah,
And he did the exact same in Edinburgh. He hit a
yeah.
wall, he hit the wall, and his autopilot kicked in. But this is the insanity of it all. We're in a B&B in Edinburgh. So he was like, he went to the train station. He had to wait on the platform for hours for the first train, and then just paid for another ticket back to Rotherham, back to Doncaster. Called Karen, who was his, for all intents and purposes, his wife.
Yeah.
They never actually did get married, but they were together like years, 20 odd years or so,
Yeah.
and she came, picked him up, and he went home and passed out. So all the times we were ringing the hospitals and the
But
police,
we
and
run the hospitals and everyone, man.
yeah, and I'm like, I'm not ringing Karen. I don't want to ring her. I don't want to worry her or alarm her. And I mean, of course, she's going to go, well, where the hell is he? He went up there with you, and where is he? So
Phoning you. Karen was phoning you.
So, I mean, it all went down to the stage where I'd got his bag with my bags on the train. We got to Doncaster, and we got off the train, and I'm waiting for the train to Rotherham from Doncaster, and the phone rings, and it's Hammy, and I'm like, you know, where the hell are you? And he's like, oh yeah, I kind of hit that wall again, and I just came home, and I've been passed out all day, and yeah, Karen's not happy with me. She's yelling at me, and I'm like, I ain't.
The bloody my t-shirt thing.
Yeah, and I'm like, but it was just that was him. It was just his. That was what he did, and you know, like I said, I met him when I was 20 years old, and we were lifelong friends, and he was the closest thing. I mean, like I say, you and I have been best friends all through, like, since being in the Navy, like.
Yeah.
But Hammy and I, we were like inseparable, and we'd go out, 2 or 3 times a week at least. We played pool together, we played football together for
Yeah.
years, and he had my back anytime, and I had his back, and he was the fighter out of us. I was the reasoner, so I was the one who was always using my I'd try and talk my way out of situations, and he would get us into situations, and then I'd get him out of the situations before he got a battering. And
Yeah.
but there were times where I always remember one guy in the Crown in the local pub where we lived, and he was a horrible dude, a horrible guy, right? Big, imposing, like fat, 6'5" dude, and and this one time he did not like me. He just hated me because, and not my words, everyone else's words. It was because I was pretty popular in there. I worked behind the bar at times as well,
I remember. Yeah. Yeah. He did.
and and he came after me one night, and like I'm like 5'9" and 100 and what am I 160 pounds. It's probably about the same back then, and he came at he came and he was gonna do me from behind. This is the kind of guy he was, and Hammy just jumped in between us, and Hammy's like smaller than me, but he was stocky, and
Yeah.
that was just an example of what he would do. He would back me up, and then later in life, when I was living in Canada, I know we'd talk about this in a bit, but he he was he would do anything for my mom. He would go there, he would help me out, he would do repairs on the house, and he wouldn't ask for a penny. And that's who he was. He
Yeah.
was like, he was my brother, the
Yeah.
brother I never had. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like say, he was absolutely like I mean, like, we met out like quite a few times, and he was always such like calm and nice to me, and
yeah,
always sort of like a really nice, decent person to me. And we always used to have a good laugh, like, and he would take the piss out of me anyway, like, but
he
um
loved you.
yeah, he was
He,
just like, yeah. But the thing is, he absolutely adored me. Like, and he was
yeah,
just like, I'll cover you. Like, whatever you want to do. Like, we went out in Sheffield one weekend.
yeah,
We went out in Sheffield, and yeah, he looked after us, like all of us, like to make sure that we had a good night and that we really enjoyed ourselves. I remember going to Sheffield. I've only been to Sheffield a few times,
yeah,
and he was with Hammy, like because he was just like such a really nice guy. So unfortunately, we do need to talk about Hammy,
well,
and
that, yeah,
Craig. Craig is what his name. Couldn't even remember his name. It's just like he's just Hammy. Like
yeah.
he's not Craig.
A, a,
But
a
so
lot of
yeah, so
yeah,
yes,
a lot of people only knew him as Hammy. A lot of people. It's like
yeah,
people knew me as Gilly, or like in the Navy, like Mags. But you
yeah,
know, but yeah,
yeah. Everyone knows he was Max, but they don't today.
not back home. No, in the Navy, yeah, that was my military name.
Yeah, it was same as me as Taff, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's just
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, or Big Taff they used to call me Tick Piss, like, but it's just so yeah, so obviously with Hammy, and like I say, he always stayed in touch with you, with yourself, and that's obviously we just spoke about that there, and you were so close together, and then obviously in 2020, Hammy went missing, um, in 2020, and it was a obviously for me to find out that situation with Hammy. I didn't know that there was any sort of like serious problems. You knew sort of like there was some problems with Hammy with with his drinking
yeah,
and that sort of stuff, because it was you live in that sort of like that area. I've got friends. They're still in Swan. They're still in Gosaina, and they're still there. They're still friends there. But
yeah,
like Hammy went missing in 2020. Um, and Craig went missing, and obviously there's information that's gone out about it. We won't talk about it like too much,
yeah,
but if you want to talk about that, what happened with Hammy, and then how was he was handling, how was he dealing with his mental health and that sort of stuff. So if you want to talk about that, that's okay.
yeah. So So we emigrated in 2011. Obviously, this it's a big move. Hammy and I were, we knew we weren't going to be together like we were, but we're both getting older. He had a daughter by this point where she was growing up as well. And Anyway, we made a pact. We were always going to stay together and meet up. And and then he and we did over the years. And then as I came back home, I would come back home every few years to see everyone. And so the first 2 or 3 times I came home, it was just like we'd never been away. And that's how guys generally are. You know, we don't see each other forever, but then when you do see each other, and it's like you've never been apart. And we were like that, and then I remember, I think it was the third time I'd been back home, or the second time. It was 2016, and everything was normal. But I did start to pick up on some things with him. He was more paranoid than usual, and he was starting to have. Now I look back on it, the signs were there right then. At that time, I didn't know any differently. But I asked him if he was okay, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine," sort of thing. And this is what he's like. He wouldn't open up to anyone,
Yeah.
And if he
Do you
did,
think that's like a men thing?
it's a
Like
man thing. I'm very similar, in some ways.
I am.
But 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 yeah, it is a man thing. That's why there's so much, mental health awareness and men's mental health awareness, because like Robin Williams, was it Robin Williams? No one even knew he was depressed, and then he committed suicide. But anyway, the next time I came home, which was, I think, a couple of years later, 2 or 3 years later, again, we'd agreed to meet up everywhere, and he was kind of a little bit sheepish about meeting up, and and he made out an excuse of, all the beer's too expensive now, and I go where the cheap beer is now, and obviously he drank a lot, and anyway, we were in the pub, and one of my friends, Ricky, had come in to see me, as he always did, and he was like, "I'm so sorry, man." He says, "Ami's not coming." And that kind of broke me at the time, because it was like, I'm not going to get to see him. And I even, I tried to reach him, and he just wasn't answering or anything. And this was just before I was going back home as well. So we didn't get to see each other that time. And that was the first time ever that happened. And then I came back again a lot. I think it was a year. It was only a couple of years then between the next time I come back, which is just the year before. So sorry, this was back 2017-ish. So 2019, I came back again. I was back in England, and this time he did meet up with me. And it was evident there was problems going on, and when we kept in touch, it was an ideal situation, because he was very technically challenged. When it came to his mobile phone, he would not. You couldn't have a text conversation with him, not ever, not even when he was young. When phones first came out, he
Yeah.
never really. It was so hard to understand what he was trying to say. And then when I would call him from Canada, he wouldn't recognize the number, so he wouldn't answer it. And at first, I put that down to, oh yeah, he's just hammy, and he didn't do emails or anything. So every now and again, I'd literally text him and like, it's Gilly, I'm going to call you in 1 minute. You're not going to recognize the number, answer the phone, and most of the time that would work, but then there were times when it wouldn't work. and that was like, closer to the time we're talking about. And
Yeah.
and I knew there were problems at that point, and that was the last time I saw him alive, and that was in 2019, and then I heard through family back home, like he worked for my brother-in-law at the time, and
Hmm.
so my
Oh, that's
brother-in-law,
right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
He worked with yeah your brother-in-law. Yeah.
yeah. So Lee would keep me up to. He would like talk to me about him, and and it was becoming harder and harder. And I tried reaching out to him a few times, and again, it was just radio silence. He wouldn't, and then I found out again through Lee. Something had happened when he was on holiday with Karen, with his partner. They were in Benidorm or somewhere like that, and he just freaked out. He freaked out on the holiday. He was convinced somebody was after him, and
Hmm.
I mean there wasn't, but it was a growing paranoia, um, and this just carried on, and you know he was he didn't know who was his friend and who wasn't at that time in his own head, and then he ran away when he got back home. They'd not got back from Benidorm long. This was like early March, I think,
Hmm.
and of 2020, and of course COVID is a thing by this point.
Yeah.
Um, so he went on the run, and the police tracked him down through his mobile phone, I think, and I think there was a tracker on his van as well, and
Yeah.
he actually he tried to slit his wrists that time, and that's when he ended up in the mental health clinic, um, and he escaped from there. Again, he was just constantly, he thought his life was someone was out to get him, and he escaped. He ran away from the clinic, and yeah, that's the
Yeah.
last time. And then I got the call, I got the message. I'd gotten in touch, so I was texting him and phoning his mobile, and unbeknown to me, he didn't even have it. So Karen had his mobile and his wallet and everything when he went into the clinic, and so Karen was then talking to me directly, and I was like, what, any news, how are you doing, and looking out, trying to find out how she was doing, and his daughter Emily, and how, any news, and I've heard this, I've seen that, and she was keeping me in the picture, but it was like she was saying it was pretty cold at that time, and he only had a hoodie. It's the clothes
Yeah.
he had. He had a hoodie, and he didn't have a wallet. He didn't have any money. He didn't have a phone. Um, so obviously there was a lot of concern for him. And then she messaged me. I was looking through my text the other day and going over it all again. And it was May the 15th, 2020, and he'd been found, and he'd taken his life. He was found hanging, and that was a I mean, that was a lot to deal with. Um,
The thing is, right, when you look back at it now, and obviously, went through, look at the news and what they were saying at that particular time is obviously about Hami's mental health, and obviously said he hung himself, and that's like that's like a big. It's not an insinuation, but like if Hammy was feeling the way that he was, and obviously he was getting, I mean, from what the news was saying, it took like, to find him, it was during COVID as well. So like it made it an awful situation as well on top.
yeah,
When you look back at it now, you're just like, well, what is the situation there? Like, is there any other information out there like that? that have come back over a period of time. But when you look back at it now, like it's like you say, it got worse. I mean, Lee would have been aware as well, wouldn't he? Because like he was
Yeah,
working with it at that particular time as well.
yeah,
And when you look back at it now, it's just like, well, yeah, there is obviously he did have mental health awareness. It was mental health problems.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, like I say, I go through my own mental health, my own mental awareness as well, and my struggles sometimes. And my therapist sort of like says like quite a lot, like, oh, have you got like, have you taken your own life and that sort of stuff, like, and I would never do. I don't think I would ever do it because obviously because my children.
Mhm.
Um, but sometimes, very deep, like, but when I see Hammy and I see that information, it's horrendous. And what we don't want to do, what we want to do is make sure that, like, if anyone is feeling on their own or aware, there is always people that can help. Even when you were in Canada, like, you were always phoning, you were always trying to find out information, you were always trying to push forward.
Well,
And yeah,
I mean, the world's a lot smaller now, right? Technology is what it is. It's like just us on on this podcast now. Now it's like I'm 8,000 kilometers away or whatever it is. Um, but you know, the aftermath of this all, like, he was only found because things opened up back in the UK a little bit. Like, restrictions were lifted, people went out walking, and it was a
mhm,
dog walker who found him. Uh, and then for me, the initial effects for me were, I mean, I just lost somebody who'd been like a
part of your life.
huge part of my life for like 20, nearly 30 years at the time. And it was like, it didn't seem real because just like, and I'd not, obviously been a close part of his life for the last 11 years. And that was my doing. That was me. I moved away. And that just installed a lot of feelings of, okay, I abandoned him. And, and I'd always, even when, he was going off the rails when we'd be out and that, if he was starting to, you know, get paranoid, because he always had a little bit of it in him. Um, I was always able to talk him around. I was always able to reach him because we had that bond. And
Mhm.
and it and I've still not got it out of my head now. It's a lot better now, but for the first year or two afterwards, I was convinced I could have saved him. I could have like got him to reason, got him to have some. Had I been back in England, I'm convinced it wouldn't have happened. Um, but I did. Like I said, we couldn't get back. We couldn't get back for the funeral. COVID
I
traveling was
know.
just not a thing, and they had to. They had a small funeral, and then they were going to hold a party for him in August, which would have been his 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, well, I've got it on text as well. I was saying I'm not going to be able to get back for his funeral, but I'm going to do what I can to be there for that.
Mhm.
And the party never happened. Again, the second or
'Cause of
third wave of COVID, and everything shut down again. And so for me, it was a full year afterwards.
yeah,
Um,
because that's obviously when obviously then during that time you lost your mum at
well,
that particular time just
the,
afterwards. Like that's
that,
obviously when we first met up again, like in
yeah,
ages.
yeah, that was
Um,
like within. Like, I also lost, like, I don't have kids. Me and my wife, we don't have kids. We have dogs with that kind of people. And I also lost my dog as well 5 days after Craig. And that was 2 days before my birthday. My birthday's on, in May. So my birthday is forever synonymous with Craig and Simba, my dog. And
yeah,
like a year afterward, like, it was Yeah, this was in May 2020, and then in October of 2021, I got the news that my mom had passed away, which um, obviously the only child, I'd come back home, and again, this is something that I dealt with separately a lot, and at the same time as Craig going missing, my mom's deterioration with
Mm.
dementia. And she wasn't diagnosed until a year after we'd actually emigrated.
Yeah.
Um, and my mom was like, that was the big problem with us emigrating. We were like, the big consideration was, if my mom's not on board, we're not doing it. And she, and again, and this is who she is, and of course she would have done this. She encouraged me to go. She said, there's nothing for you here. Go and, you know, go and see what you can make of yourself somewhere else. And the plan was for her to join me. She came over, and she came over the first time, and everything was great. And we made plans for her to come back again. And the second time she came back 4 months, and we tried to keep her there. It was like, we're gonna get the visa, and we're gonna get you a visa, and then we'll move you over here, and you'll be with us, like, and but this was the early signs of her dementia kicking, and she just completely couldn't handle it. And understandably so, at that point, a decision had been made, and she came back home. But anyway, when unfortunately, she did pass away, I came home obviously to sort out the funeral and the sale of the house, and I had to deal with all that. And part of that journey home, I went to go and meet Karen, Craig's Hammy's partner, and we talked, and we had a really emotional, meeting, and that was the first time I could get any sort of closure on the situation. And
Mm-hmm.
she was telling me at the time, she says, you couldn't have helped him. Nobody could reach him, and he was that far gone. And
Yeah.
I mean, I still think that I could, but that's just me. Um,
No, that's just you.
but it
Yeah.
it's important, if you see anyone that's, if you have a close friend, and you'll know that person, and you'll be able to tell if something's wrong. Don't just listen to them saying, yeah, I'll be fine, it's all right, it's male bravado, and or whatever. um, it's not always the case, right? And the signs are there, and there's a lot more of awareness now, but at the time there really
Yeah.
wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we do. That's why I started doing talk tonight. It's something that I started thinking about it like last year, and
Yeah,
then obviously we stopped our gym earlier this year, and it was because of my situation with my health, and then obviously like going on talk tonight then is to sort of like to chat about things like that sort of situation, and it's very important to talk about men's, especially men's mental health, because there's so awareness and so bullshit like with it, and we don't talk,
yeah,
and I
no,
think that's what like talk tonight is all about, really, is what we're trying to do, is to get this out information as much as we possibly can,
yeah,
uh, to talk about Craig, talk about like Hammy, and he was such like an amazing person, and we
yeah,
know that like you did everything that you could, and look, you put some, you put it like, even though you think about Hammy a lot, like everyone does think about Hammy a lot, like, so don't think that you couldn't. You did, as much as you possibly could. You were in such a bad situation with your mom, and you dealt with it with real integrity. You did it like, I know for a fact that you are the person that will, you will go way above. what you need to do. I know you were in Canada, and people go like, "Oh yeah, he was in Canada," blah 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 blah. They don't know the bullshit. They don't know the real situation. You dealt with it. You dealt with it, and I know that you and Mel like are strong now together. Feel like that. Feel like a rock together. You've got the dogs together as well to deal with. You're in the bloody snow. What is it like minus fucking 25 degrees?
Mine,
It's like
it's minus 27 today. Yeah, it's cold. Yeah.
yeah, so let's talk about quick about like about Canada.
Yeah.
Um changing that change to Canada was just like a massive change
Yeah.
to you and Mel. Um like I mean you've got a passport now as well, haven't you? You've got like Canadian
Yeah.
passport as well, haven't you?
Yeah,
Mel?
we're dual citizens now. That happened last year. We finally got our dual citizenship. So UK and Canadian citizen now. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's just like it's taking you. I know for a fact you've been trying to do this, like sort this out for like over 10 years.
Yeah,
Like, well,
it was always a money situation. So you have to qualify for it, which takes 3 years of being here, and
yeah,
then so the plan was we renewed our permanent residence every 5 years. So um, when the first one came around, it was like too tight. The application length would have been we wouldn't have done it in time. So it was like, okay, we'll renew as permanent residents, and then we'll actively pursue the citizenship. And then um, first one of our dogs was diagnosed diabetic. So we didn't have insurance for them because it was so expensive over here. So again, lessons learned. So we were, you know, and you'll know about this, of course, but we were doing insulin shots for her,
okay.
and then yeah, and then a year after that, our other one of our other dogs, Simba, who eventually, we lost just after Craig. Um, he also, through various treatments he was undergoing, one of the side effects of a drug, a really bad reaction, was he also became diabetic. So now we had two dogs, insulin for two dogs, injections, and we just had no money. So, all this money went into keeping the dogs as
Mm,
healthy as we could. And they lived, we lost Maya. Unfortunately, she had a form of cancer, and we lost her when she was 8. So she was midlife for a husky, and then
yeah,
like Simba had a good long life. He lived like till 12, which, considering his condition, was insane. He did really good, but all this was like we just didn't have the money, and then it only really became a thing to get the citizenship like last year, um,
yeah,
and that was a result of a small inheritance that my mom had left. So we kind of used some of that. It wasn't a lot, and we used some of the money. We used the money to get the citizenship done, and and I was struggling, and I don't see it as mental health because I'm I have that male bravado, and it's like, for me, it's like, no, I'm just dealing with some stuff, and I'll get through it. And I didn't look at it as mental health, and I have to acknowledge that, yeah, it is mental health, because, and
and it's like,
I've only acknowledged that because my company is so good at bringing it up. We've been on courses, and I ended up talking to someone in one of the courses, and they kind of told me that what I was going through was like, it was like textbook, depression, guilt. I've suffered anxiety attacks, which I don't wish on anyone. They're debilitating. It was an awful thing to experience for the first time. Um,
yeah, it's
and
horrific. It's horrific. Like
yeah, yeah,
I have seizure. I've had seizures, and
Yeah.
and anxiety. And when they look back at it now, obviously through the mitochondrial disease, it's a
Yeah.
very similar situation, like anxiety and depression. I have got depression,
Yeah.
like I've got
Yeah.
serious depression, like,
Yeah.
and I have very bad days through depression.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm happy that you can talk about depression because it's. Um, do you think that's been like over a period of time with your depression, or do you think it's just again like
Well,
just over a period of time?
it was there. So I made a conscious decision to move away from everyone I'd ever known and move to another country. And I think in the back of my head, which is really in hindsight, I don't know why I thought this because I've never been good at making friends. I don't actively seek out people
Mhm.
to become friends. I think that's part of being an only child. And I figured I'd make friends over here, and I'd always have the friends back in England. When I went home, and they'd come and visit me, and I didn't realize, in reality, it's like, okay, well, it costs a lot. It costs money to come to Canada, right? And a lot of people, for didn't do it. So I don't, I can't hold that against people. It is what it is. And anyway, like even now to this day, I don't have anyone like you or like Craig was or like Sean, my best man at my wedding. We've been friends since being like kids. Um, like all those guys, like another good friend of mine who's struggling with cancer as well right now, John.
Yeah, John, yeah,
Yeah, I don't have friends like that over here. I don't know. And I push people away as well. So if people get close, my natural reaction is, I will go out every now and again, but it'll be like I'm a loner, and but in at heart, I guess, but yet I'm lonely.
yeah,
It's a weird situation where I actively, I'm happy in my own company. I always have been. That's part of being
mm,
an only kid. You grow up like learning to do things yourself. You entertain yourself, and especially like in the 80s and 90s, that was a thing, right? It's
mhm,
kids were seen and not heard. It's like get out and play, right? But I've been and I still am, I'm still lonely, and I still have those feelings, and that feelings leads into depression, and then work life and personal life have to balance, and if they're not in balance, that also adds to the situation, and
mhm.
it is a real thing, and and forcing myself to confront it, and I gotta say, I wouldn't even have got through it all. This was there before what happened to Craig, and then that just it just got worse. Um,
Yeah,
and then, like say, struggles with my mom, looking after my mom, making sure she was cared for, making sure everything was done, making sure the house was kept up to standard and in a good state of repair. Back home, all this constantly was always going on. And again, I don't, I don't expect any, don't want any sympathy for any of this because I moved away. I chose that. Um, I don't think I ever knew how difficult it would be, but it
mhm,
really is. And I've lost uncles while I've been away, and these things happen. But but like say, my wife is an amazing woman. She really is, and we yeah, I mean, a lot of people look at our Facebook and they think, "Oh, you guys have got so much good things going on." They see us in the hot tub, and they see us like on this. We bought the small sailboat with some of my mum's money, and this is not like hundreds of thousands of dollars sail. We were talking about something that was like $10,000 or something like that, £10,000. Um, And but it was the sailboat thing. My wife hates water. She hates sailing. She's not. She's not a fan of it, right? And but we were in.
Well, that's it. I don't believe you.
We were in the hot tub, and as someone I once knew always used to say, they used to quote a Latin saying, and basically, I forget the Latin part, but it was "in wine the truth," and it basically said that, you drink enough wine and you'll just, the truth comes out, sort of thing. And and I drink wine. I enjoy wine, more than a glass of wine, and you know, and it would be in the hot tub when it would all come out. I would bottle everything up, and my wife knew I was bottling stuff up.
We got a hot tub.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
We don't use it too much.
you should do. They're great, but
Yeah.
I'd encourage everyone to get one. By the way, if you can afford it. But anyway, but yeah, I'd bottle everything up to the point where a couple of glasses of wine in the hot tub, and then sooner or later it comes out, and it would come out, um, and then we talk about it, and like I said, we've been together now, 27 years. We've been married for 21, 20. We had a 20th wedding anniversary last year.
Yeah.
And we've had our up and downs, but we've worked our way through it, and we're still strong together, and we support each other, and she supports me, and she'll tell me when I'm being an absolute dick, and she'll tell me when I'm being an idiot, and she's my sounding block, right? She'll, like even now, when like things are a lot better now because I'm talking on this cast, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that a couple of years ago. But
Yeah.
it's the best, honestly, apart from my wife, the best therapy I have is my dogs. But I come home and my dogs, I just, no matter how bad a day I've had at work, no matter how bad a day I'm having out of work in life, I come home and I see those guys, and there's something genuine. There's something genuine about a dog's love, right? They just are so excited to see you when you come home, and it's like nothing else matters to them. And when you realize that, it's healing, right? It's therapy, and
Yeah.
and I'm
Don't
look.
bonkers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They. I mean, like everything else.
She only like Charlie. She only loves Cara. We say it's 50%, but it's not.
Yeah.
Like Charlie is like I'm just out there now. Like so, Charlie be out there, and like because it's me talking.
Mhm.
If it was Cara talking out there, she start barking. He would start barking. He
Yeah.
would like because obviously we had another one as well, but obviously we had to take him off because obviously I wasn't very well.
Yeah.
And they are therapy. Like they are little shits at times, but like I bet you love them to bits. And I know for a fact, yeah, you and Mel like love those dogs. Like
Yeah.
and
We couldn't be without them, and we do everything for them. We give them the best life that we possibly can. And we go without things like we did like with the insulin, that we went without a ton of stuff, things just to make sure they were taken care of, and we still do the same now, but yeah,
yeah,
it can be tough being apart, and like I say, we're terrible at keeping in touch with each other. And you and I, we don't talk anywhere near as enough as we should. But then when it's like when I found out about your at the time it seemed to be a stroke. You've probably still got the recording of me crying in the tub. I was broke when I heard about it. when I heard about it, I was broken in two. It was like, and I had to talk to you, and you weren't able to talk to at that time, and so I recorded. I just sent you a recorded message. I don't know if it was a video or recorded message, but
Yeah.
I know I started crying in the middle of it because I'm like, oh God, I can't lose anyone else, and that's how it felt, and you know, and I was saying to you, there's one of my
Oh,
dogs now. But I was saying to you, like, when we were chatting yesterday, I was saying to you, just watching what you're doing now and listening to your podcasts is more therapy for me because I get to hear you every day, and it's so soothing. Honestly, it is. It's so soothing for me. Um,
thank
and I love what you're doing, and it just is who you are. This is what you do, and it's what you've always done. You're just, I don't know. I love you, Rob. I can't say enough about it, about who you are and what you do.
you, man. No, like say we're probably finished now anyway, right? But I just
Yeah,
want to say thank you, man. Like we've been chatting like for nearly like about 4 hours now, like back and forth.
I know. Yeah.